A quorum being present, we'll call the meeting to order. Would ask the town clerk, Mrs. Gaynor, to come and open the meeting for us, please.
Plymouth, to either of the constables of the town of Halifax and the county of Plymouth, greeting. In the name of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you are hereby directed to notify and warn the inhabitants of said town qualified to vote in the elections and in town affairs to meet at the Halifax Elementary School in said Halifax on Monday, the 20th day of November next at 7:30 o'clock in the afternoon, then and there to act on the following articles. And you are directed to serve this warrant by posting up attested copies thereof at the Town Hall, Halifax Post Office, and 3 other public places in said town, 14 days at least before the time of the holding said meeting. Hereof fail not, and make due return of this warrant with your doings thereon to the town clerk at the time and place of meeting as aforesaid. Given under our hands this 31st day of October in the year of our Lord, 2017, Thomas Milius, Kim Roy, Troy Garin, true copy attest, Tom and Hammond, Constable.
Thank you, Mrs. Gaynor. If you would all please rise and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. In case there's someone here who has not been to a town meeting before, if you want to speak, you need to call my name, call Mr. Moderator, raise your hand, and I'll call on you in turn. We follow a lottery system in Halifax, so although the articles are numbered, that's only so that we can locate them. We'll do a lottery, and the town clerk will pull the first number now.
Article 5.
Article 5 is proposed by the Board of Selectmen. Mr. Milius?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend Chapter 236, Section 2, Registration and Maintenance of Foreclosed Properties of the Code of the Town of Halifax as printed in the warrant.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to amend Chapter 236, Section 2 of the Code of the Town of Halifax. Mr. Seelig, are you going to speak to this? Mr. Seelig is the executive administrator and able to explain these things for us.
Some days. This was one of the bylaws that the town voted back in May. This was an entirely new bylaw that required banks and other financial institutions that foreclosed on properties to maintain them properly. This is not to do with the town's foreclosure process at all. One of the things the AG's office wrote back, because the AG's office has to review all these bylaws, is they recommended a change in the definition of the owner, because there's a question about trustees and such as whether they're owners and such. So what this change, and you'll see there's a couple words that are crossed out, and then a number of words are crossed out, a couple of words are added under underline. That incorporates the changes that are recommended by the Attorney General's office.
Okay, thank you. Finance Committee's recommendation, Article 5.
The Finance Committee recommends.
Finance Committee recommends. Any discussion on Article 5? Seeing no evidence thereof, all those in favor of Article 5 as proposed, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next article is?
Article 4.
Next article is Article 4, again proposed by the Board of Selectmen. Mrs. Roy.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend Chapter 183, Section 1, Licenses and Delinquent Taxpayers of the Code of the Town of Halifax as printed in the warrant.
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to amend Chapter 183, Section 1. Mr. Seelig, you want to speak to that for us?
This was another recommendation from the Attorney General's office. What happens is that the Treasurer Collector's Office needs to provide the various town boards, committees, and officials with a list of delinquent taxpayers regarding licenses and permits that are issued by the town. The change that we made, which was an update based on a change in the state statutes about this, indicated that the treasurer collector would do so periodically. The AG's office indicated that the law also requires the treasurer collector to do this at least annually. So what we've done is incorporate both, that the treasurer collector will do this at least once a year, but also do it on any other periodic basis that that person and the boards and committees are looking for that information.
Okay, thank you. Finance Committee's recommendation.
Finance Committee recommends.
Finance Committee recommends. Any discussion on Article 4 as proposed? Seeing no evidence thereof, all those in favor of Article 4, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. The next article?
Article 3.
Yeah, I'm doing a very good job on the lottery here. Article 3,
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Garin.
I move that the town vote to amend Chapter 23-35 revolving funds by the Code of the Town of Halifax by omitting the source of revenue for the Council on Aging elderly bus from transportation fees and donations to transportation fees and other receipts.
Okay, we have a second? Second. Yes, a motion and a second on Article 3. Again, Mr. Seeley.
It sounds like a broken record, but this is another recommendation from the Attorney General's office. In this case, there was a question of whether donations could go in a revolving fund. I worked with Town Council Larry Mayo about this, and we worked out that in essence, since all donations are receipts, if we say receipts instead of just donations, then everything that we receive for elder bus services can go in that revolving fund, whether it's donations, fees, or anything, other type of receipts that the town would receive.
Okay, thank you. Finance Committee's recommendation, Article 3.
The Finance Committee recommends.
Finance Committee recommends. Any discussion on Article 3? Seeing no evidence thereof, all those in favor of Article 3 as presented, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Article 1.
We're here for the main event. Article 1 is proposed by the Board of Selectmen.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town will vote to transfer from Hop's gift account the sum of $73,598.16 and transfer from stabilization fund the sum of $106,644.84 for the sum of $256,000, including $75,757 previously appropriated through Article 11 of the special town meeting of May 8, 2017, for the renovation and reconstruction of the Hops Playground, and that the Halifax Board of Selectmen is authorized to accept any gifts and donations, to file and accept grants, including any grants from the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, including but not limited to parkland acquisitions and renovations for communities, park, grant that the Board of Selectmen is authorized to take such other action as are necessary to carry out the terms, purposes, and conditions of any grant, and that any grant shall be administered by the Board of Selectmen, its designee, or and that the Halifax Assessors Map Number 72, Parcel 8, 34 acres and 33,310 square feet in size, located at 480 Plymouth Street, upon which the Hops Playground is located, shall be dedicated for a playground under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 45, Section 3. Said property shall occur only if funding from this sources, including but not limited to commitments from state grants, is equal to $106,644.84, and that the $106,644.84 transferred from stabilization shall be returned to the stabilization fund upon receipt of such funds.
Do we have a second?
Before I turn it over to Charlie to explain, I just want to extend from the Board of Selectmen our thanks to the Friends of Hops, who have worked tirelessly for our community in order to help rebuild this park. We also want to thank our residents and businesses that have supported the fundraising efforts. Whether you have run in the Hop for Hops, shop for the Shop for Hops, attended the Chops for Hops, or watch Hazel the cow plop for Hops, we thank you. It's been years in progress, and we applaud you for everything that you've done, this whole room, for our community and for our children. And this is hopefully the final funding. So Charlie, do you want to explain it for us?
Mr. Seeley.
So So the reason the article is here before you tonight is that the town several months ago applied for an open space grant to obtain $50,000 from the state as part of the monies needed for the, I don't call it, the renovation and rebuild of the Hops Playground. In case you don't know, the Hops Playground is the playground that's located next to the library, between the library and the water department building. The original Hops Playground was built back in the 1990s, I think it was early 1990s, and was community funded at that point. It wasn't, as far as I remember from reading my notes, because I wasn't there at the time, is that it wasn't a town appropriation at that time. It was what's called a community build project, where both money and then the volunteers built Hops Playground. Back a couple of years ago, the playground equipment had disintegrated sufficiently that we needed to have it removed to prevent injuries from people using it. The Friends of Hops has then spent the last several years raising money to do this. They've raised so far approximately $150,000. They're continuing those efforts. So, for instance, there's another Hop for Hops this spring, and they're hoping that by this spring they'll have raised the rest of the money they need to, which is going to be another about $56,000. We're also, as I mentioned, applied for the grant of $50,000 from the state. The state's very particular about the wording of an article that will comply with the state grant requirements. And that's why, even though we passed a similar article in May, we've come back to you with the language that's in this article. And I know there are a couple of concerns about the language in there, in that there's a state statute that in essence says once you've dedicated a parcel to open space, that's what it has to be used for. It can't be used for anything else. There is a way of going through the state legislature, through Article 97 of the Massachusetts State Constitution, that would give the permission to the town to use portions of that parcel for other uses. For instance, if for some reason we wanted to expand the water department building, or if we needed to expand the school building. We're not, obviously at this point, unlike 15 or 20 years ago, thinking of doing an expansion. We were back then, because we had filled the place to the rafters. We were using closets as schoolrooms here at that point, but we're nowhere near there. And unless the population of the school increases sufficiently, we're never going to see an addition needed anytime in the near future. But if we did, we could follow the Article 97 process and be able to get permission from the state legislature. And it's a reasonable concern to make, but I think there's a process that will allow us to deal with that situation if it ever comes true. In terms of parking for the parcel, we can expand the parking. We're looking at already at expanding that library Hops Playground parking lot, because we're going to expect more people to be using the playground if it gets built. At this point, and we don't have to trigger the Article 97 because it's part of the playground use. Next month, our hope is that we're going to get that state grant. They should announce it next month. That's the normal timing of the grant cycle. But we have to have this article approved this calendar year. It's very specific again from the state. We are appropriating money tonight from the stabilization fund. It will require a 2/3 vote. But the wording of the article is very specific. The money that we're getting from the stabilization fund is there pretty much as a placeholder to say we're committing the funds. But the wording says unless we get monies from other sources, such as the state grant or the additional fundraising by Friends of Hops, that is equal to the amount that we're appropriating tonight, we will not go forward with this project. We're not going to be using town funds specifically for this project. When we get that money from Friends of Hops, when we get that money from the state, the money would then, that we appropriate tonight, will be transferred back to the stabilization fund automatically, so that there'll be no net use of town funds on the project. And I know there are people from Hops here. If you have specific questions about the playground, if there are financial questions, myself or the town accountant will try and answer them as best as possible.
Finance Committee's recommendation on Article 1.
The Finance Committee recommends.
Any discussion on Article 1? Seeing no evidence thereof. Mr. Seelig's correct. Since this is a money coming out of the stabilization fund, we have to have a two-thirds vote. Moderator will try to hear a two-thirds vote or unanimous, if we can be unanimous. Okay. All those in favor of Article 1, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. The next article is Article 2. Yep, right? Yes. Like Nostradamus here.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Milius.
I move that the town vote to accept Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 33B, allowing for the sale of alcoholic beverages between the hours of 10 a.m. and 12 noon on Sunday, the last Monday in May, and on Christmas Day or the day following when said day occurs on Sunday.
We have a second.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve a acceptance of a bylaw. Mr. Seelig.
It's a very strange situation. Several decades ago, the state approved a statute allowing cities and towns to then give permission to restaurants and such that serve alcohol on their premises to serve that alcohol before the normal noon start time. Restaurants could be open serving, pancakes and quiche and whatever else they're serving on Sunday morning, but they couldn't serve alcohol before noon. Then in '93, the Board of Selectmen at that time approved allowing several restaurants to start serving alcohol at 11, and that's obviously been happening now for decades. During the last couple of years, the state then changed that statute to then allow cities and towns to have the boards of selectmen give okays for licenses to start serving alcohol at 10. And we had a request, and the board of selectmen honored that request, and we've moved forward. However, I went back after all that, because 1993 and earlier was before my time here, and realized this town had never actually accepted the statute that allowed for all this. So we're bringing this back to the town meeting to say, please, yes, validate what we've been doing for the last almost 25 years, and allowing the restaurants to serve alcohol earlier, and we'll just move forward from there. There's no pressure, there's no requirement for the restaurants to serve alcohol anytime earlier than noon. If they want to do that then, or at 11, or 10, it's going to all be up to them.
Finance Committee's recommendation on Article 2.
The Finance Committee recommends.
Finance Committee recommends. Any discussion on Article 2? It's a very sober crowd. Okay. Seeing no evidence thereof, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. I would take a motion from the Board of Selectmen to dissolve this town meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor of dissolving the town meeting say aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Town meeting is dissolved. Thank you very much.